Hello friends, Tal here, and welcome to my Brewmaster Monk Legion Pre-Patch Survival Guide. Today we're going to be taking a look at a class that I have been playing since they came out and how they've changed and what the future holds for the Brewmasters going into Legion. Starting with what you need to know as soon as the pre-patch drops. So, what has changed? Quite a lot. This might be a little bit longer than my other pre-patch survival guides because there's more that I think I need to get into. Because more than the other classes, maybe only the DK has had as much of a change as the Brewmaster Monk. But it is an entire play style change, and it's important to keep this in mind when you're looking at everything. So before I get too deep into everything, let's just go over the basic abilities that they show here on the character or on the spec select screen. So, Jab is gone. It's being replaced by Tiger Palm. It's going to reduce the cooldown of all your brew abilities into basic attack. Then you also still have Keg Smash. It's your rotational ability. Every couple of seconds you use it. It's going to also reduce the cooldown on all of your brew abilities. Breath of Fire is also still here. Now it's actually worth pressing. It's a short cooldown. It's going to do fire damage. And of course, it's going to still have the same interaction with Keg Smash. That's going to have the dot on there from Keg Smash. And then when you Breath of Fire, it implodes and has like a damage over time. Stagger is still something that you are doing. You are still staggering damage is the way you mitigate damage. And it's basically a portion of the damage that you take is delayed and spread out over the next couple of seconds. Purifying Brew is still here. It's going to remove half of your stagger, not the entire thing, half of it. And it's going to share cooldowns, your brew charges, with your new active mitigation, your Iron Skin Brew. Now, what does Iron Skin Brew do? It has a short cooldown that massively increases the amount of damage converted into stagger. Okay? What is gone? There is no more shuffle. You are not blackout kicking to keep that buff up. You have a higher base stagger percentage that you're doing, and then Iron Skin Brew boosts it up even higher. But you are no longer using chi. You don't have to worry about combo building it all up and then using it on certain abilities. Things like Chi Explosion are gone. All that kind of stuff is gone. It's been removed from the Brewmaster Monk, and what you get left with is a class that at its core, the mechanics are a little bit more complicated than they've been in the past. It still plays sort of like a brewmaster of old, but it has a lot of different things going for it and things that you have to kind of keep in mind and how they work and all that kind of stuff. Now, different from the other specs, I'm going to go ahead and go over everything else before I get into the way it plays, because I think that I feel like I need to highlight those things before we get too deep into the way the class plays now, or the way that it's supposed to be playing and how it's actually going to play out and all of that. So let's go ahead and just jump right into first of all, let's go to the spellbook, because there's a lot of different things here that need to be taken into account. So first, Blackout Kick is Blackout Strike. It's a 3-second cooldown. It just blasts with an amount of chi energy. It just does some damage. It's a rotational ability. It has no defensive benefit. Baseline. With the artifact traits, you get a little bit more interaction there. But baseline, nothing crazy happens with Blackout Strike. It's rotational. You just use it when you use it. Expel Harm is going to cost 15 energy, and it's going to pull in your healing spheres and expel damage, doing 10% of the amount of healed. You're going to be generating your healing orbs, and Expel Harm will only heal you when you have a bunch of orbs out and when you pull them in and you use it to heal yourself using them. Just keep that in mind. Breath of Fire, as we already talked about, has a short cooldown. It's just going to be doing some fire damage. It's actually, usable now, especially since you do not have Spinning Crane Kick anymore. Other things of note, Fortifying Brew is 7-minute cooldown now. 7 minutes, but why? Because it's going to be reduced by Tiger Palm and Keg Smash. It's going to be reducing the cooldown of your Fortifying Brew, but it's still big. It's your big badass cooldown. You don't have guard anymore, so this is literally it. That's it. Unless you take Dampen Magic or Diffuse Magic or Dampen Harm, that's all the type of cooldowns that you're going to be getting. So you also then have to keep in mind, so there we have Keg Smash. It's going to be reducing the cooldown of your brews by 4 seconds. We already talked about Iron Skin Brew a little bit. As you can see, you have 3 charges between Iron Skin Brew and Purifying Brew. It's on a haste reduced cooldown, so it just, as you get more haste, it gets lower and lower. Other things that I think are important to keep in mind. So Tiger Palm is going to be reducing the remaining cooldown on your brews by 1 second. Purifying Brew only does half. You still have your Teleport. You still have Roll, of course. Zen Meditation is still here. It's going to reduce all damage taken by 60%. But if you move or take damage from a melee attack, it's going to be cancelled. And remember, glyphs are gone. So you can no longer glyph to have it be moved unless it's a minor glyph, and I haven't actually been able to tell if there's a minor glyph for that. but that's another thing to keep in mind. Glyphs are gone. If anything's been affecting one of your spells, you're not aware of it, you just go ahead and read your tooltips. Remember that glyphs are gone. Take the tooltips at face value now. Don't assume, for example, that if you Zen Med, you're going to be able to move with it because you know you could in the past. No, keep that in mind. And then you have this passive that you also need to keep in mind. Celestial Fortune. You have a chance equal to your critical strike chance to be healed for an additional 65% of the amount healed. Okay, so randomly, depending on your crit, heals are going to be healing you for more. And then, of course, Gift of the Ox. When you take damage, you have a chance to summon a healing sphere visible only to you. Moving through the healing sphere heals you. And a new mastery. You have basically a chance to get a stacking dodge buff every time you're hit by a melee attack. So basically, every 3 or 4 attacks, you're going to be getting a free dodge. And just make sure that you're dodging consistently. So what does all this mean? Well, the reason I'm going a little bit more in depth with these passives is the way that it works is a little bit different. You know, you have your talents on top of it, which will also feed into it, which is specifically Gift of the Mist, which is why I'm holding back on the mechanics just yet. So in the first 2, you have different healing options. Chi Wave is still, not the best for healing yourself. Chi Burst is always going to be fantastic for anything that has more than one target. Eye of the Tiger is actually pretty consistent healing on yourself, but Chi Burst is usually the best. Chi Torpedo is not going to do any more damage, but it's being stacked with momentum, so after you use it, you have a move speed buff for a short amount of time. This tier, though, is important to keep in mind. Black Ox Brew, from what I've been reading on MMO Champion, is pretty much what you go. You just take Black Ox Brew because it gives you so many charges of brew. You don't care about the energy so much. You care more about the brew charges. But there's also this option here for Gift of the Mist, which Gift of the Ox has a 60% increased chance to trigger based on your missing health. How does healing orbs work? Basically, every time you take your entire health bar in damage. So in my case, when I take 806,000 damage, I will generate 1 healing orb. Okay? Obviously, that doesn't mean you have to die to get a healing orb. But it means that as you're being healed by healers during an encounter, you're taking damage, they're healing you up, you're taking damage, they're healing you up. When you take 806,000 damage, you spawn 1 healing orb. But Gift of the Mist makes it so that as your health goes down, you have a higher and higher chance to generate Gift of the Mist healing orbs. So this is basically a talent that you would take if you're trying to go for more of a self-sustained, healing yourself build, so that as you get bursted down, you're able to pop yourself back up with Expel Harm, because you're going to assume that you're going to have 3 to 4 orbs sitting around. But Black Ox Brew has in testing, and from what they've been doing in Legion, keep in mind, Legion, Black Ox Brew is looking like it's going to be best. I think it's going to come down to, during the pre-patch, it's just going to come down to personal preference. You have to keep in mind, during the pre-patch, you have your stats boosted super crazy high up because of the fact that you have decent gear. Once you level even one time, when you get to 101, your stats will be all over the place. You're going to be reduced. You're not going to be as strong anymore. I'm here on my geared monk that was copied to the beta because I specifically want to point out how much crit I have. I have 43% crit. That's an enormous amount of crit. And Celestial Fortune, even with 1 healing orb, I heal myself for almost my entire health bar. And that's going to be the situation for some of you guys. If you have the gear, it's going to be big and strong. But keep in mind that that's the differentiation there. And I wanted to go ahead and mention that before I get too deep into the mechanics. Other than that, you have the talent to Dave now. It's awful. It feels terrible that I have the talent to get Dave. But I mean, that's there. Diffuse Magic has been weakened. It's going to reduce damage taken by 60% for 6 seconds. And Dampen Harm is going to reduce damage you take by 30% for the next 3 attacks that deal 15% or more of your maximum health. So they weakened both of those talents there. I still wish we had at least one more baseline cooldown, a damage reduction. Not an absorb, but a damage reduction or something. But, I mean, you got that. Healing Elixir has been changed to be a 2-charge heal you for 15% of your max health when you want to, or if you drop below 35% health, you heal yourself. Rushing Jade Wind no longer has an energy cost. Niuzao is basically Zuen. Special Delivery is like the passive choice if you're using a lot of your brew charges. I'm not actually sure entirely on what the statistical differences between these 3, which is the best, but I personally feel like without Rushing Jade Wind, you don't have consistent, reliable AoE. So if you're going into anything where you require AoE, take Rushing Jade Wind for the love of God. This is a random proc, and this just does pitiful AoE damage. And then you have a 100 tier. Now, it's important to keep in mind, the 100 tier was awful, but it has been changed, and it is a lot better now. You actually have a legitimate choice to make. And Elusive Dance is going to be good in situations where you're purifying often. It's going to give you an up to a 15% dodge and 15% damage done buff for 6 seconds based on the stagger amount that you purify. So if you purify green, 5%. If you purify yellow, 10%. If you purify red, 15%. This is good in a situation where, again, you're purifying often because you're taking a lot of stagger damage and you want that extra damage buff. And then you have high tolerance, which is good because stagger is going to delay an additional 10% of the incoming damage, and you gain up to 15% haste based on your current level of stagger. Again, 5 for green, 10 for yellow, 15 for red. Now in Legion, you're basically at red stagger the entire time, and there's almost nothing you can do to get rid of that, okay? That's what testing was coming out in Legion. This is pre-patch though. Hellfire said that was going to be nerfed. I don't necessarily think high tolerance is going to see a lot of use because it's going to be a lot weaker. You're probably not going to take as much damage, but I'm not entirely sure. I haven't done the raid with the new changes. But this is good in a situation where you have stagger up all the time and you want that extra haste to reduce the cooldowns on many of your abilities. And then you have Blackout Combo, which provides you possibly the most interesting and most in-depth choice when it comes to all the talents. Your Blackout Strike empowers your next ability. If you use Tiger Palm after Blackout Strike, its damage is going to be increased by 200%. If you use Breath of Fire, the cooldown is reduced by 6 seconds. Keep in mind, please, Breath of Fire, when you get artifact traits along with Blackout Strike, will give you some damage reduction. It does not do that now. So Breath of Fire is literally only for damage. Blackout Strike without Blackout Combo is literally only for damage. Keep in mind, you don't have access to those things yet. But if you use Keg Smash, it's going to reduce the remaining cooldown on your brews by 2 additional seconds. So it'll be 6 seconds, right? Yeah, math. Okay, 6 seconds. If you use Iron Skin Brew, it's going to pause stagger damage for 3 seconds. Interesting. Very interesting, because again, you're going to be having a lot of stagger all the time. Pausing it for 3 seconds, and Blackout Strike is every 3 seconds. It's a cooldown. So, I mean, that's some decent interaction there. And then Purifying Brew grants you a stack of Elusive Brawler, which is your mastery. Probably not the one you're going to want to go for, honestly. It's not even remotely as strong as the other ones. But you can already see, with a 3-second cooldown, with all the different possibilities, you have a lot of choices with this talent. And that's really, really cool. You have those choices. But now we're just going to go ahead and get into then what the mechanics of the class. How does this play out? How does it work? Essentially, the way that I've been reading about how people have been using it, the best way to do it, honestly, if you go for Black Ox Brew, right, essentially you get put into a situation where you start the fight and you pop all your Iron Skin Brew because it gives you increased amounts of seconds there. Then you're doing the fight, you're using Keg Smash, using Tiger Palm. Your energy actually regens pretty decently fast. You're making sure that you're keeping yourself not energy capped. You're going to get your charges of Iron Skin Brew back, but you also just use Black Ox Brew, and that way you can have more of the Iron Skin Brew, or that's when you start to purify. Now remember that purifying only removes half of it, so it's a lot more important than it was in the past. Essentially, you want to give yourself a nice big buff of Iron Skin Brew, and then purify as you need to. While keeping in mind that you're always Keg Smashing and Tiger Palming when you need to. You use Blackout Strike on cooldown, especially Blackout Combo, because you want the extra benefits of your abilities. If you use Fortifying Brew, you have to make sure that you remember that Keg Smash and Tiger Palm are reducing the cooldown, so you have to use it more intelligently because it's not 5 minutes. You won't have it back up as soon as you can. And if you wait until a super drastic moment to use Fortifying Brew, you will have been missing out on the cooldown reduction the entire time that you haven't used it, so keep that in mind. It plays a little bit weird, okay? I'm just going to be really honest. It doesn't play the way that people will be used to, but it's not bad either. We're talking about Hellfire Citadel. We're talking about pre-patch. You're going to have some decent gear anyways. You're not going to be struck down and murdered easy or anything like that. It's not like you're taking super crazy damage. That's going to be more in Legion when you're going to be taking all that damage. But you do have to keep in mind, there's a high possibility you're going to be at heavy stagger way more often than you're used to. You need to purify and be aware of your purifying way more often than you're used to. And you have to keep in mind that your Iron Skin Brew is really your only way of reducing damage. It's just going to increase your stagger by an additional 40%. And let's see, do I have anything that tells me a baseline stagger? Nope, not particularly. It's a change. It's important to keep that in mind. It is a big change to the way that the monk plays. But whether it's bad or not, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's game breaking, but it's a mentality switch. Your healers will not want to keep you healed up at 100% all the time because that's going to reduce the amount of healing orbs that you get, especially if you go for Black Ox Brew. Remember, you need to take your entire health bar and damage to proc even one of the orbs. There's artifact traits that make the orb stronger, more likely to proc later on, but again, you don't have access to that, so we're not going to talk about that. Overall, I think you should take a little bit of time to really read all the tooltips, read all your talents, maybe read a little bit of the forum posts, get an idea for how it works, maybe watch some of my Brewmaster videos so you can see how I played it in, like, for example, the dungeon run that I did earlier, my Brewmaster second opinion. Possibly go ahead and watch that. But while I like Gift of the Mist, all signs are pointing to Black Ox Brew being the way to go. You pop all your Iron Skin brews, you go ahead and use your Black Ox Brew. Keg Smash and Tiger Palm are reducing the cooldown of Black Ox Brew because, again, it's reducing the cooldown of your brews. So you can see how all this synergizes together. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting, especially when you throw in Blackout Combo. And I think that there's a lot of potential in this spec. It's just a little awkward to get used to in playing. And again, I really miss that one little extra damage reduction cooldown that could be good for the spec. Beyond that, let's just go ahead and take a look at the gear real quick. So your 2 set is going to be increase the chance for your Gift of the Ox to summon a healing sphere by 5%. So there you go, just flat out buff to your healing sphere spawning. And then your 4 says every time you gather a healing sphere, the remaining cooldowns of your Iron Skin Brew and Purifying Brew reduced by 5 seconds. Very, very nice. You can already see you're going to be having a lot of these charges just from using Keg Smash and Tiger Palm and using Black Ox Brew. But then there's also the addition of the Class Trinket. So Class Trinket at Mythic Warforged double upgraded. When you drop below 66% health, you have a chance to gain Iron Skin Brew. Iron Skin Brew also increases damage dealt by 18%. So, it's very similar to the way that it used to work with Elusive Brew. But the only problem is that when you go into Hellfire Citadel, if you're looking at specifically just a normal Mythic, so we're going to, not entirely normal, but a Mythic Trinket is going to be under 49% health. Now, while I say you don't want to be, 100% health all the time, I'm not telling you to be 49% health. That's dangerous as fuck. So whether the Class Trinket's going to be used at all, I doubt it. I mean, it wasn't used as much. Anzu's, of course, is going to be a versatility static buff with a mastery proc. Warlord's Unseeing Eye is still a haste with damage reduction. And I mean, the other trinkets you don't really use as much as Brewmaster. I'll still show it because I did for all the other ones. Remember that bonus armor no longer exists on trinkets, rings, necks, cloaks, but you still have the situation of Sigil being versatility mastery. Tyrants is still stacking stamina with static mastery. You don't want this. No tank has wanted stamina for like 3 expansions now since Wrath. So overall, I mean, we talked about what's changed. We talked about the way that the class works now. It's a lot more prioritization on purifying and managing your brew charges. That is your resource, your brew charges. Energy regens pretty fast, even on a not geared character. So you have to keep that in mind. You have all these synergies between your different brews and your Tiger Palm and your Keg Smash. The only other thing to really point out is, as far as stats go, with Black Ox Brew, haste going into mastery or crit seems to be your best bet. Haste because, of course, it's going to be reducing the cooldown of a lot of your abilities, including all your brews, which is going to give you more of the Black Ox Brew because it's going to reduce cooldown on Keg Smash, give you more energy, which is going to let you Tiger Palm more often, which is going to reduce Black Ox Brew, which is already going to have a lower cooldown for your Purifying, and your Iron Skin, which is also going to be reducing Fortifying Brew. See, it all spins together. It all flows into each other with this specific build, Black Ox Brew. If you don't take Black Ox Brew, that synergy is weakened a little bit. It's still there, but it's definitely weaker. So haste, mastery or crit, depending on choice. Mastery being, you dodge one attack. I mean, it's more reliable, you could say, but crit gives you a little bit extra healing, gives you the Celestial Fortune benefit, and then versatility being somewhere after that, with everyone keeping in mind that versatility is a lot stronger in Legion than it used to be in WoD, with all the magic damage and everything. This is pre-patch, though, so I don't think it's going to be too important to know, but keep in mind versatility is a good stat now. It's actually pretty decent for all the tanks. So there we go. We talked about pretty much everything that I want to go ahead and get off my chest. Brewmaster, more than any other tank, has changed drastically. It's not as easy to just pick up and realize how it plays, but you want to keep in mind all the different synergies. You want to keep in mind that you want to have this up as much as possible. I mean, maybe not all the time, because if everyone remembers that blue post Celestion did a little while back where you're not supposed to be using this at full health, I think that the community has found a better way around that as far as what I'm reading on MMO Champion, but, things could still change. But as far as what you need to know for the pre-patch, this is it. Your class has changed possibly more than any other tank. Read all your tooltips, read the way your talents work. Most often, people go Black Ops Brew. If you go Gift of the Mist, be aware you're going to be generating more healing orbs, and it is important to keep in mind the generation of healing orbs, and that's really the only way to top yourself up. But anyways, guys, that's been my Brewmaster Monk Legion pre-patch survival guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and like the video. Please subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of content. I appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'm pretty excited to go ahead and get into the pre-patch tomorrow. See you guys around.